Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I would like to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm going to ask Sean Hatch to lead us in the pledge. You're welcome, sir.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job, Sean. Councilman Curran.
Together we pray. If there is to be peace on earth and goodwill toward men, we must believe in the morality of the universe. We must not lose that hope, and we must pray for that dream. That one day men will rise up and see that they are made to live together as brothers. That all men will be judged on the basis of their character. That men will respect the dignity and worth of the human personality. That brotherhood will be the first order of business in every legislative agenda. That those elected will work justly, love mercifully, and walk humbly with their God. With this faith, we will speed to the day when there will be peace on earth and goodwill toward men. In the words of Martin Luther King Jr., we ask your blessing, Lord, on this council as we begin the work of 2011, a new year of grace for the citizens of our city. We continue to pray for our servicemen and women and their families as they work to defend our cherished freedoms. Amen.
Amen. Councilman Curran. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mercanti? Curran? Iftorici? Riley? Seabury? Stanley? Taylor? Cola? Negasha? Ellis? Cabo? Sadi? Biscotti? Trombetta? Knapp? Nero? Perkins? Shanice? Metello? Ty Schultz? Tamino?
There being 19 present and 2 absent, let the record reflect that Mr. Riley is on town and family business, and Mr. Taylor is home sick. So we wish him a speedy recovery. The first 30 minutes of each council meeting are reserved for public speaking, an opportunity for the residents to address the council. If you would like to address the council this evening, you must be a resident and or taxpayer of the city of Danbury, and you must address the council about an item that is specifically on the agenda this evening. With that, is there any member of the public that wishes to address the council? Any member of the public that wishes to address the council?
I'm Mike Cunningham, 101 West Reading Road. I am chairman of the Ives Trail Task Force. I urge you to pass items 6 and 7, the easement agreements for the Ives Trail. These parcels are in 2 areas on or near Old Post Road. The first 2 toward the DLN Drive, the other 2 near Old Stars Plain Road, which is Third Road off West Reading Road. These are 2 of the last pieces of the puzzle, leaving us only 1 more to go. Item 7 will require a public hearing because it does involve a landlocked triangle of land, which we actually found was owned by the city. It is important to note that the funding for the cost of the easements is to come from the Open Space Bond of 2008, which was overwhelmingly approved by the people of Danbury. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your service to the task force. Any other member of the public wish to address the council this evening?
Thank you. My name is Lynn Taversack. I live at 110 Haystown Road, and I wanted to address the council on 2 items on the agenda, on number 7 and number 14. I'm a little concerned that you would adopt a resolution in advance of a public hearing on the transfer of this city land to Mr. Roy. I would think it would be much better for you to hold the public hearing and hear what people have to say before you approve of this particular easement. On number 14, I had noticed for the past 5 or 6 months that The parking spaces were built and paved and painted long before this council has agreed to allow them to be licensed to BRT for this development on Crosby Street and Hartel Drive. And it seems like the cart is in front of the horse. It seems as though the agreement had already been made and that your action here tonight really is kind of superfluous. I'm a little concerned that the documents posted online were blank where the amount of value that would be paid to the city is supposed to be inserted. So I hope you'll clarify that during the meeting tonight. The license, how much the licensee will pay for the use of those spaces over a period of 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Haversack. Anybody else wish to address the council this evening? Seeing none, then we'll move on to our announcements. There are several events that will be happening throughout the month. Just a couple of quick anniversaries we want to recognize. Greg and Barbara Seabury have an anniversary on January the 26th. Thanks for the reminder. Very happy to make January 28th is Lee and Mary Teichel's wedding anniversary. Congratulations. January the 8th at Saturday morning at 9 a.m. is at New Hope Baptist Church is a annual breakfast in recognition of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And certainly the public who is watching tonight, as well as members of the council, are cordially invited. In addition to that, City Hall will be closed in honor of Dr. King on January the 17th. And for those of you that are interested, on January the 27th, there will be a John F. Kennedy exhibit commemorating the 50th anniversary of the election inauguration, and that will be at the Ruth House Library at WCSU. I think you'll find that pretty interesting. On January the 29th is the 12th Annual Mayor's Ball, an important fundraiser for the Danbury Museum and Historical Society, as well as City Center this year, which is our beneficiary. So certainly tickets are still available. You can talk to Lisa in the office, set up a table. We can put you at a table. It's a lot of fun, and we try to make it as least costly as possible. That is by no means not all the things happening in the city in January this month, but it is certainly some of the highlights that you'll see as well. So with that, we will move on to our regularly scheduled meeting. And we'll start with the minutes. Mr. President, minutes, please.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that the reading of the minutes, as all members have copies. The copies are on file in the legislative assistant's office. Second.
Motion made and seconded by Councilman Perkins. Any corrections, deletions, or changes to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on acceptance of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Majority Leader, the consent calendar, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The consent calendar for January 4th, 2011. Number 3, receive the communication, certification of funds from the Director of Finance and approve the transfer of $2,415.80 from the Fairweather Learmont Fund for the purchase of ESL materials. Number 5, receive the communication from the Airport Administrator and adopt a resolution to apply for a grant to reconstruct parts of taxiways Bravo and Charlie. Number 6, receive the communication and adopt a resolution to renew the prior City Council approval to acquire easements of land lot number I-21002 and lot number I-21003 for the Open Space Initiative and the Trail Greenway. Number 8, receive the communication and adopt a resolution that will allow the City of Danbury Fire Department to extend a memorandum of agreement with the State of Connecticut. This MOA will allow the Danbury Fire Department to continue to house one mass casualty trailer. This extension covers December 20, 2010 through December 1, 2014. Number 9, receive the communication and adopt a resolution that will allow the City of Danbury Department of Health and Human Services to request additional funding from the State of Connecticut Department of Public Health for its WIC, which is Women, Infants, and Children program. The additional funding request will increase the budget for the fourth and final year of the current WIC contract from $345,380 to an amount not to exceed $406,089. Number 10, receive the annual report from the Board of Ethics for the period of December 8, 2009 through December 6, 2010. Number 11, receive the reports from Corporation Council, Planning Commission, and the City Engineer as required at the November 2010 City Council meeting and approve the conveyance of Parcel X, Zinni Construction LLC, Fairlawn Avenue. Number 12, receive the report from the Planning Commission and the City Engineer as requested in the November 2010 City Council meeting and approve the water main extension 28 Federal Road K13014, subject to conditions stated in the reports. And 13, receive the report of the City Council Committee as a whole and adopt the proposed amendment of the Code of Ordinance, Section 8-33, Fire Marshal Inspection, fees for inspections, and Section 8-34, Fire Marshal Plan for review fees, and adopt the resolution. And that, sir, is the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. What's your pleasure, Mr. Knapp?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Made and seconded by Mrs. Teichholz. Any discussion about the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll try your minds. All those in acceptance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have the motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, item one, please.
Item 1, communication, Danbury Main Street Partnership.
What's your pleasure, Council? Mr. Trombetta.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to receive the communication and refer this to an ad hoc committee consisting of Corporation Counsel, Director of Finance, Director of Planning, and the representative from the Mayor's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Trombetta. Ad hoc committee shall consist of the following: Mr. Trombetta, Mr. Taylor, and Mr. Visconti. Madam Clerk, item 2, please.
Communication, donation to the Fire Department. To Mayor Marky Fountain, members of the council, from Jeffrey Harold, dear Mayor Fountain, and members of the council. The Fire Department has received the following donation from Danbury Hospital, $1,500. Funds to be deposited to donations account 6,000.2010 account. I would ask that this generous donation be accepted at the January 2011 meeting of the City Council. If you require any additional information, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. Respectfully submitted, Jeffrey R. Harold, Fire Chief.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, Council? Mr. Negashaw.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to receive this donation, accept the donation from Danbury Hospital for $1,500 and have the funds deposited into donations.6,000.2010 account and send an appropriate letter of thanks.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Kohler. Any discussion? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds in acceptance of the donation. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. 3 was consent. Madam Clerk, item 4.
Request for extension of sewer, Danbury Hospital. Dear President Cabo and members of the council, on behalf of our client Danbury Hospital, I am submitting the enclosed application for extension of sanitary sewer main in connection with the proposed addition to the hospital's structured parking lot in the blue garage adjacent to the Hospital Avenue. Danbury Hospital is embarking on an initiative to enhance and improve its existing facilities on its 24 Hospital Avenue campus to promote better accommodation of patients and address future facility needs. The hospital proposes to expand its existing 3-level blue garage to provide additional parking spaces to the campus. The expansion of the garage will include a 4-level vertical and horizontal building addition with growth of the garage footprint in the westerly direction and the addition of a 4th parking lot level over the existing garage. Current environmental regulations require that the garage stormwater discharge to a sanitary sewer line, necessitating this application to the hospital. To the council, The hospital has also submitted an administrative site plan revision application to the city's planning and zoning department for the garage addition. We look forward to your favorable consideration. Sincerely, Brian R. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, council? Mrs. Stanley? Sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion, refer this to city engineering and planning for reports.
Seeing no objection, it is so ordered. Item 5 and 6 are consent. Madam Clerk, item 7, please.
Resolution easements, Ives Trail Greenway, lots 124011 and 123012.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's your pleasure, council? Mr. Knapp?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to refer this item to a public hearing, committee of the whole, and refer it to the planning commission for a report.
So we refer this to a committee of the whole, which will be a committee of 21 members of the council. They require a public hearing, and the commission has to provide a report. Seeing no objections, then, so Mr. Rotel.
Your Honor, I'm in a bit of a pickle on this one because I want the greenway, but I also want that 2.7 acres on top, and I'd like to be able to somehow find a way to accomplish both of these things, especially now that we have an easement to the parcel from the Wabika side. It might actually turn out to be a nice respite during the trail, which essentially crosses private property. This would be one of the only public parcels along the greenway. I'm going to abstain from this vote. I don't want to kill the greenway, but I'd like to see the public hearing maybe work out another way to accomplish both of these goals.
So you're raising your hand to say you're saying there's no vote that will be taken.
Point of parliamentary inquiry, I think through the chair to the parliamentarian, just to clarify based on comments made before this meeting as well as Councilman Rotell's comments, that the referral is not a motion and we are not actually voting on or adopting the ordinance, the resolution before us, but we are referring the entire item for action down the road by committee of the whole by the council at its next meeting, correct? Correct. Thank you.
Good. Items 8 through 13 were on consent. Madam Clerk, item 14, I believe, is a report. Mrs. D, Mr. Chair.
Ad hoc report, lease license agreement for BRT.
Stations.
Lease license agreement, BRT, December 21st, 2010. Chairwoman Mary Teicholz called the meeting to order at 6:12 p.m. In attendance were committee members Don Taylor and Paul Rotella, Mayor Mark Bowden, Corporation Counsel Ash Pinter, Planning Director Dennis Alpern, Finance Director David St. Hilaire, Dan Bertram of BRT, ex officio members Joe Cavo and Phil Curran, and a member of the public. Ms. Teicholz said this meeting was a continuation and asked Mr. Alpern to give a synopsis of the Planning Commission report. Mr. Alpern said the Planning Commission gave a positive recommendation with 5 conditions. 1, right to terminate. 2, BRT is responsible for maintenance. 3, indemnification. 4, easement rights. And 5, review by Corporation Counsel. Ms. Teicholz asked the difference between a lease and a license. Mr. Pinter said a license is a contract to use property. It doesn't require the formality of a public hearing and can be terminated more easily. Mayor Bowden said a license is the preference to get the bagel shop in more quickly. He was concerned about holding up the process, especially for anyone developing the Main Street area. Mr. Taylor asked what was the cost per parking space. Mr. St. Hilaire said $1,800 for 4 spaces. Mr. Bertram added that would allow 4 seats per parking space in the bagel shop. Mr. Rotello said he opposes a lease and asked why can't the city keep control of the parking spaces and put in meters. Mr. Pinter said the Planning Commission would not approve additional seating without the parking. Mr. Taylor moved to recommend to the council the city prepare and submit a 5-year lease with a 5-year renewal clause with conditions as required by Planning Commission and a license fee rate now being charged for non-parking garage public spaces. Seconded by Ms. Teicholz, motion passed with Mr. Rotello voting in the negative. Mr. Rotello moved to adjourn at 6:52 p.m., seconded by Mr. Taylor. Respectfully submitted, Mary Teicholz, Chairwoman, Don Taylor, Paul Rotello.
Thank you, Mrs. Teichholz. What's your pleasure, council? Mr. Cabo?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that we receive the communication and approve the license agreement as presented with the committee's recommendation that the rate be charged for non-parking public spaces currently in the city.
Motion made and seconded by Mrs. Stanley. Discussion under this item. Mr. Otello.
Thanks, Your Honor. As I indicated during the second ad hoc, two ad hocs on this to reach this point. We were faced with four choices that we could have made. One was parking meters, one was a license, which is what the ad hoc obviously ultimately came up with. One was a lease and one was a sale. I think the idea of parking meters came out of your office, and that's something that I responded to because it would mean that we would be able to keep control of those four spaces, and money from the meters would be able to go into the parking authority. And at no time would we ever cede any control, even temporarily, to the petitioner, which is not a particular problem vis-a-vis the petitioner, but it's just a bad precedent in my mind of taking what few resources we have in public parking on Main Street and turning them over to a private entity. I'm still not convinced that a license is the best way to go on this particular one. I have done some further research after the ad hoc of the Corporation Council. One of the ideas that came up was to go back to the parking meters and then have the petitioner do a side deal with the parking authority so that the lots would remain essentially under city control, but he would be able to bag the meters and essentially lease them outright from the parking authority. Apparently the parking authority doesn't do that. So these are some of the kind of nuts and bolts behind this, but I think the real issue here as we move forward, putting aside this particular item, is dealing with the Planning Commission's insistence that in order to have a certain amount of retail square footage under control of a vendor, they have to have stranded or locked-in parking spaces within close proximity or contiguous to the establishment. And I think that that just doesn't work in the Main Street corridor. If we're trying to make Main Street a destination, and we are, applying what would normally be used for a suburban strip mall to Main Street itself, for my money, this isn't going to work. And what we really need to do, instead of applying a patchwork solution of leases or licenses or selling or parking meters, is figure out a way that we can aggregate the parking spaces on Main Street and apply them to any particular retail establishment who has the audacity and the vision and the courage to invest in Main Street. This is not, in my view, the way to go about doing this. I will be voting against this. It's not a vote against the petitioner. It is a signal to the Planning Commission to come up with a better scheme for moving forward on this. And that's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Any other discussion related to this? Yes, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one quick question. I'm not sure who can address this or not, but just as one of the speakers mentioned earlier, just curious to the fact how was the building the parking spaces paved and striped before a lot of the information got to the council itself? I'd just be curious if someone can address that for us.
Sure, I will. When Mr. Bertram indicated the need to be able to, and the planning department said that we didn't have the requisite parking, he asked could he convert these spots into parking. These were never spots before. There was no parking ever there before. I said, go ahead and do it, but in order to get the right kind of approval, you're going to have to get permission from the Planning Commission, go through the requisite approval process. If you don't get that permission, then we own 4 new spaces that we're going to basically say thank you very much, and you're not going to get the extra seats in your particular restaurant. Since he had the equipment there and he had everything ready to go, I also instructed him that he could not use those spaces until this body acted on whether or not they were going to allow him to do a license, a lease, or meters, which we investigated earlier on. So this was done at his expense, and with the full understanding that he may never recoup his money if he can't get the authority to use the spaces. And it just seemed like it made a heck of a lot of sense. other questions? Mr. Cheney.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what you're saying, would that mean that this license agreement was made after the day you put those parking spaces in?
No, because he hasn't used the spaces. They're roped off. He hasn't been allowed to use the spaces until he's got permission from us. It's ultimately our property. If we don't give him permission, then we're going to use the spaces. But he doesn't get the requisite count he needs for the restaurant. Further discussion. Mr. Rizgat.
Thank you, Your Honor. Has it been determined actually that where the money will be sent to? Is that going to go to? Okay.
City of Danbury. Mr. Simon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Through you, it's either the Director of Finance who can field the question with regard to, and I apologize if I didn't hear in the motion, the actual market rate that will be part of this license agreement approved.
Mr. St. Louis.
That would be about $250 per space per year.
Follow from the chair, Your Honor, and that's based on a comparison with other similar parking spaces that the parking authority has?
Yeah, when you consider that with the parking authority is actually maintaining the space, plowing and doing everything related to that space. We will not have to do that, nor will we have to incur the liability. They will maintain the liability, will be made on their policy for that.
I think just to be clear, if I might clarify, we were instructed by the ad hoc to go find parking rates. The parking authority does have multiple rates for uncovered spaces, so it's really confusing. There's a $40 per month per space rate that they use for some spots. They use $250 per year for some spots around the train station. They have really not a very good tiered system. So Mr. St. Larry's recommending a lower tier because Mr. BRT has to do the maintenance.
Maintenance and their initial investment and all that. Sure. That way, if you take into consideration this last storm and any future storms and any maintenance on the lot, that's going to cost us perhaps more than $800 per year if we were to use the market rate. We don't want to have to deal with that little stuff. And it's a lot easier just to say you maintain all that and we'll just take the lower rate instead of dealing with the middle rate.
Thank you, Mr. Simler. Just a comment. When this issue first came up, I thought these were spaces that already existed and was trying to figure out where they were. And being candid, in all candor, I've had my issues with the petitioner on other projects, and some people may find this surprising, but in this case, what looking at this as if this is just Joe, anybody petitioner applying for this, what seems distinct from actually leasing existing spaces is that these are spaces that didn't exist before. We're not leasing out existing city parking spaces that are already metered, and they're actually looking at this map. And is this phase 2 of me, Your Honor, just to clarify, in this elbow between Lee Hartel and Crosby Street, those 4 spots, are those the 4 spaces known as phase 2?
Actually, Mr. Bertram's here. You might want to address them, Mr. Bertram.
Yeah, they're marked spots A, B, C, and D.
Okay. And so they're actually buffered from the street and are more contiguous with the parking lot as opposed to being traditional public parking. So in my mind, it makes it a little bit different than if we were actually licensing metered spaces that previously existed. Thank you, Your Honor.
So further discussion about it, Mr. Tremblay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Through the chair to Corporation Council.
Mr. Pinter, please.
In regards to the space, which I am in favor of, in regards to insurance, is there an amount that the petitioner must maintain? Is it like a $5 million liability, or what is the liability situation that they must maintain? And are we listed as additional insurers on the policy?
Mr. Chairman, according to the provisions of the proposed license, they will be required to submit an insurance policy and the amount of insurance they have presently on the property, naming the city as additional insured. So we will know what that amount is prior to approval of the insurance policy. But whatever they have as coverage for the entire property, which is probably substantial, we will be additional insured on that property, on that policy, I'm sorry.
Further discussion, Mr. Genesi.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just on the past license agreement regarding parking, the land was subject to the assessment of taxes. Would this piece also be subject to taxes as well?
Mr. Pinter.
It's not made subject to taxes. There is no provision in for this. It's a license agreement, it's a contract. So we are not incorporating language about that. We assume that they will comply with payment requirements as required by law.
So the previous lease agreement we did was subject to the assessment of taxes. Why isn't this? What makes this different from the previous lease we did on Bacchus Avenue?
Bacchus Avenue releases.
Property taxes that was subject
Releases
to property taxes.
an unusual condition in that particular case. UB Danbury had a long history of assessment. With respect to long-term leases, as was the case with UB Danbury, we've had assessment issues in that case over a period of time. The lease does incorporate specific provisions regarding payment of taxes because that was the issue on the table in that particular case. Here, there were no tax issues on the table. This is an interest not in land, but it is a contract interest. And we did not assume or foresee any need to put in a tax clause, since unlike UB Danbury, there were no issues outstanding that needed to be resolved. So it's it's entirely different character of document and arrangement.
Further discussion? Seeing none, then I'll try your minds on the lease. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Nay.
And Mr. Rotella in the negative. Mr. President, Department of Reports.
I'd like to waive the reading of the departmental reports as all members have copies. The copies are on file in the legislative assistant's office.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Negasheth. Discussion under department reports. Mr. Perkins.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just like to say thank you to Andrea and her staff and all the volunteers for first night to make it another success as it has been in the past. Thanks.
We had a good time, didn't we, Mr. Perkins? Good time. Yeah, Mr. Rotella. Any other discussion? Mr. Rotella.
Thanks, Your Honor. From what I hear on WCBS, we may be in for another storm, and who knows how big that one's going to be. But I just want to congratulate the city for the attack. I mean, let's credit where credit's due here. New York totally dropped the ball on this one. Danbury's number one. We cleaned up the streets. I saw on dead-end streets within 90 minutes of the storm starting. These are dead-end streets that very few people even traverse. Plows coming down, putting down salt and sand within 2 hours of the storm starting. They stayed ahead of it. They pulled the cars off where they had to, and within 12 hours, the streets were passable, and within 24 hours, it was cleaned up. It looks good. They even got the little sidewalk in front of Park Avenue School where the plows had put huge piles on both sides, and the kids couldn't walk around. They did that yesterday. So, kudos to the city, the Public Works Department, the mayor's office, and everybody who pulled together to pull this off. I know it was not inexpensive. It was a lot of money. It was well worth it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rotella. I also want to say that Mr. Idrola injured himself while plowing. I mean, that's how dedicated this man is to what he's doing. But it's good to see you back at work, Antonio. And, phenomenal job. We were on the phone all day, Sunday and Monday, and the crews were just spot on all over it. So here, good comments. Further discussion. Mr. Seager.
I'm just curious on your part. I haven't had any comments that I've heard tonight about Chief Harold's bow tie.
Not even know. It's a new year. I resolved to be not so tough on the chief. Any other comments under the department reports? Seeing none, then I'll try to remind us of acceptance of the reports. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Before we break, a couple of quick things. I'll extend all committees I'm going to appoint the Board of Education Budget Committee. That'll be chaired by Mrs. Stanley. That will include Mr. Arcanti, who's praying for it down there, I see. Mr. Riley, because he's not here. Mr. Visconti, because he gets all this stuff to do. And Ms. D'Amici, because she did such a good job last year. So that is the Education Budget Committee. Everybody get that? Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It's moved in. Second by Mr. Sadi. All those in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.